Students, I welcome you all to this next video lecture of this series. The basic aim of this course that we are undertaking is to learn how to write a Fortran program or to learn the basics of Fortran programming. The version of Fortran that we will be using or will be discussing about is Fortran 7.7. So in the previous lecture, we discussed about the basics of Fortran programming, the compiler that we need, and how we can write a simple program and run it. In this lecture, we will be starting with learning the actual Fortran language. To write a Fortran program, as I have already told you, we need to know the Fortran language. Something like, say, you know how to talk in English. You need to know the language, you need to know the script, you need to know its alphabets, you need to know the grammar, etc. So today's lecture will be starting in our journey of learning the alphabets, you can say, of Fortran programming. So let's see how we can write a Fortran program. So first thing we discussed in the earlier lecture also, we need an editor. This can be in different forms depending upon the operating system you are using. You need an editor where you can actually write down the source code or the program in the high-level language. The high-level language we are talking about here is Fortran. So this program, why we need to write the program to instruct the computer to do a certain job. Now, for any language, as I told you, we need to know the script, how to write. So what script can we use to write a Fortran program, or what are the alphabets of the Fortran language? So the different symbols, letters, characters that we can use to write a Fortran program is called the Fortran character set. So this Fortran character set, it consists of the alphabets of the English language. There are 26 of them. So A starting with A to Z, we can use them. So Fortran as such is case insensitive. Unlike the case of other programming languages like C, which is case sensitive, Fortran is case insensitive. Whether you write in capital letters or in small letters, Fortran does not differentiate between them. It is case insensitive. So we can use the alphabets of the English language. Of course, you can't write like we write English. So there are different terminologies, different rules which needs to be followed. We'll be learning them. But of course, the Fortran character set, it includes the alphabets of the English language. Then the numbers, numerals starting from 0 to 9 can be used in writing a Fortran program. Then we have the different symbols for arithmetic operations. What are these symbols? Next slide we'll talk about it. And of course, other symbols that a Fortran compiler allows to be used for writing a Fortran program. All of these combined together forms what we call the Fortran character set. The alphabets, the numbers, the symbols for operations or otherwise that can be used for writing a Fortran program is as a whole known as the Fortran character set. So this is the whole list of the Fortran character set. So English alphabets A to Z, capital letter 26, small letter 26. But as I told you, Fortran compilers don't differentiate between capital and small. Then the numbers 0 to 9, underscore can be used. Then this plus, minus, this is used for multiplication, a star. Slash is used for division. This is used for power, double star. These are the arithmetic symbols. That apart, the other symbols that they used, parenthesis, dot, equal to, comma, quote, dollar, colon. These are the symbols that is allowed to be used to write a Fortran program. Nothing else. So all these, they form the Fortran character set. As I told you, Fortran is case insensitive. But here example is given of C++ and Java, which are case sensitive. So apart from the characters that we use to write a Fortran program, we have to deal with different kinds of data. A program is basically meant to solve or is written to solve problems by the computer as per our instructions. Say, in a class of 30, we need to find out the average weight of the students in the class. We need to write a program. So what we will input, the input that the program will read will be the weights of all the students. So we will perform a mathematical operation which will find out the average weight of the whole class. Then the output will be the average. So here we are dealing with data. So what data we are dealing with? We are dealing with a data which will be a number. Of course, weight expressed as a number. So as I told you, for different kinds of problems, we need to deal with different kinds of data. So different Fortran constants are used in a Fortran program. So there is something called Fortran constants. What are these Fortran constants? These are data or quantity whose value does not change during the execution of the program. This is something which we need to understand. Fortran constants seems trivial, but you need to understand that Fortran constants are kind of data or quantity whose value does not change during the execution of a program. A very good example of a constant can be pi, the value of pi. It's a universal constant, we know the value of pi. So if we have to perform a mathematical calculation using a program where we need to use the value of pi, we will define the value of pi right at the beginning of the program, and this value will remain same during the execution of the program. It won't change. So that becomes a constant. It's a Fortran constant. So depending upon the type of data that we deal with, Fortran constants can be of different types. So let's see what are the different types of Fortran constants. So Fortran constants can be broadly divided into two types. Character constants. What is a character constant? We'll discuss later. First, let's see the classification. Second is the numeric constants. Numeric constants again can be of two types: integer constant and a real constant. Again, real constants can be of two types. It can be in the fractional form or exponential form. Now let us see what are these different Fortran constants one by one. So this is the broad classification. Fortran constants can be character or numeric. Numeric can be either integer or real. Real can be of two types: fractional or exponential. Next, let's go into these constants one by one. Character constants. What are these? Character constants are nothing but a string of Fortran characters. A string of Fortran characters means the character set that we were talking about. It's a string of Fortran characters, one followed by the other. So a basic requirement of a character constant in Fortran is that they should have only accepted characters from the Fortran character set. Otherwise, the compiler will show an error. Basic requirement again of a Fortran character constant is that it should be enclosed between quotes. So if I want to write out Fortran as such using a program, this Fortran is a character constant. It has to be included within quotes, single quotes, or even now modern Fortran compilers, they allow double quotes also. So if I want to write out, as I said, Fortran as such, I can put within single quotes or double quotes. But if I want to write, say, Fortrans apostrophe s, then I have to use a double quote here and a double quote here, and the single quote comes here. Otherwise, it shows an error. If I put a single quote, and another single quote here, it shows an error. So the maximum length of a character constant depends upon the word length of the computer that you will be using. It varies from system to system. So let's see whatever I was talking about. Fortran character constant using single quotes and double quotes. Let's go to the online compiler that I was talking about. So this online compiler, as we learn, as we go along, this is the best way to just check whatever we are learning. Kind of a hands-on practice. So this is about character constants. The next constant that we talked about is numeric constant. What are these numeric constants? These are nothing but data in the form of numbers. I was talking about finding out the average weight of students in the class. So that weight, when we input using a program, will be in the form of numbers. So that is a numeric constant. So it can be of two types, as I told you. It can be integer constants or real constants. So what are these integer constants? Integer constants are also called fixed point constants. Means these are numbers without a decimal point. We don't have a decimal point in integer constants. These are straightforward integers. These are whole numbers without a decimal point, comma, etc. So it consists of numerals from 0 to 9 and symbols plus and minus. So this plus and minus denotes the sign of the numbers, as you can make out. It has to come at the extreme left of the number or the numeric constant. It seems silly, but A computer does not understand. If somehow you feel that, let me say -9, I have to write it as 9 minus, it won't understand. So it has to come before the number, right? If I want to write, say, 100, -100, it has to be -100, 100. And plus is optional. It has to occur at the beginning, and this positive sign is optional. If you don't put any sign, the compiler by default takes it as positive. Maximum length, again I told you, it depends upon the word length of the computer. So it will differ from system to system. Examples of integer constants can be 284 is without the sign, means this is taken as positive. This -12, +12, +13, etc. These are examples of valid numeric constants. Next, the real constants. As you can make out, real constants are also called floating point constants. These are numbers written with a decimal point. So it can be expressed in two types, as we saw in the classification. It can be in the fractional form, or it can be in the exponential form. What is a fractional form of real constant? These are numbers written with a decimal point only, no exponential part. It's written with only a decimal point. So what are the rules for writing a real constant? It consists of only digits from 0 to 9 and a decimal point. There should be one and only one decimal point. If you have more than one decimal point, the compiler will find an error. Positive and negative sign before the number. As I told you, negative sign here also is optional. No special symbols are allowed in between. You can't have a real constant like 10_11 or something like that. These are special symbols, underscore, hash. These are not allowed. It has to be a pure number with a decimal point. Examples: -0.023, +123.56, 435.6. These are examples of valid real constants in fractional form. What about the exponential form? As I told you, these are numbers having an exponential part. So, the exponential form of a real constant in Fortran is used to express very large or small numbers. For example, a very large or a very small number is written with an exponential part. Say, we have a number 0.00011 zeros 234. It can be written as 2.34 into 10 to the power minus 12. In Fortran, this 2.34 into 10 to the power minus 12 can be written as 2.34 e minus 12. E stands for exponential. It's not necessary that E has to be in capital letters. As I told you, it's case insensitive. So you can write small e as well. So this part is called the mantissa. 2.34 is called the mantissa, and this part is called the exponent. So the exponential form has two parts, the mantissa and the exponent. As I told you, 2.34, this is the mantissa, and this part is called the exponent. So alphabet E is written in between the mantissa and the exponent. This is a correct way of writing a real constant in exponential form. The mantissa should be a valid real constant in fractional form. So we found out, or we talked about the rules for writing a real constant in fractional form. So the mantissa should be a valid real constant in fractional form. And the exponent is always an integer with at most 2 digits. you can't have a decimal point in the exponent. This is important in the exponent part. It can have a plus or a minus sign, the exponent part, e, plus, minus, whatever. But if no sign is given, it is default taken as positive. Apart from these constants that we showed in the classification tree, there are two types of special constants in Fortran which deals with special kind of data. One is the complex constant. Complex constants are nothing but data in the form of a complex number. The complex number that we are talking about is, let me say, in the form of a plus of ib that we talk in mathematics, where I is the imaginary I, or 2 plus of I3. Real part is 2 and the imaginary part is I3. So Fortran has a limitation in the sense that we can't write out exactly a complex number in the form 2 plus of I3 or in the form a plus of IB, where a is the real part and b is the imaginary part. So we need a special kind of a constant in Fortran which is known as a complex constant. It's an ordered pair of real or integer constants. It is a pair which is contained within parentheses. The constants are separated by a comma and the pair is enclosed in parentheses, brackets. Okay, for example, complex constant 9.01, comma 0.603 within parentheses. What this represents? It represents a complex number of real part 9.01 and imaginary part 0.603. So this is a real constant. This also is a real constant. That's what we are talking about, an ordered pair of real or integer constants. This also plus 1.0 minus 2.0. This means this is a complex number. 1.0 minus I 2.0 or 1.0 minus I 2.0i, a plus of ib. This also, this is a real part and this is the imaginary part. So these two are purely integers, 1 and 2. 1 is an integer constant, 2 also is an integer constant. This is a real constant, this is a real constant in fractional form. Okay, so complex constants are a special kind of a constant in Fortran which are used to denote or represent a complex number. Therefore, the last kind of constant that is used in Fortran are what are called logical constants. Logical constants, it represents a logical value. If you remember the decision box that we were talking about in flowcharts, when you are writing a program or when you are trying to solve any problem, even in your real life, at times we reach a crossroad. You have to decide. Decision box. So in the decision box, let me say, check whether A is equal to B. So the result can be either true, means yes, A is equal to B, or false, means no, A is not equal to B. It can't be anything else. So that is the decision box. And the logical value, that is the logic that we are using, whether A is equal to B, whether it is true or it is false. So logical constant represents those logical values. It can be of two types, it can be either true or false. So these logical values are stored in a kind of constant which is known as logical constant in Fortran. So only logical constants that are possible in Fortran is, we write it like this in Fortran with a dot, true, or it will be false. So this is all about Fortran constants, the different types, and the rules which needs to be followed in writing down these constants. So in the next lecture, we'll be discussing about Fortran variables. Means variables are nothing but names of memory locations where we can store these Fortran constants. So this is all for today's lecture. Thank you.